Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the next episode, we have a voicemail from a mystery caller, which brings up, of course, the mystery box. What's in the mystery box? We don't know. It could be anything. That's why you never turn down the mystery box. All right, let's listen to that call now.
First and foremost, thanks for organizing this and the show. I believe Manny Diaz was the 110% correct hire. It plays to the strength of our team. Mike Elko may have got the big paycheck and the last laugh, but I kind of think Nina King may have boxed his ears off by figuring out how to keep the strength and conditioning coach. And do you have any idea what the state of the NIL for Duke football is? I know we're probably low on the totem pole compared to a lot of the major schools, but it looks like we're going to be able to hang on to Jonquez more. And just kind of want to know if you have that information on what it looks like retaining other players, since this has become a pay-to-play pro league, so to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for calling in, and I appreciate your kind comments about doing the podcast. It is a lot of fun, and it's something I enjoy doing. It's become a little bit of a labor of love, I guess you could call it. And I agree with you that keeping Coach Feely in Durham is a big deal, and I think that that will pay dividends. I certainly hope it will continue to pay dividends. It has worked out very well for the last 2 years. There's no reason to think that it can't continue like that. On the NIL stuff, that is something that, from what I understand, is growing. There are more donors at Duke, and there should be an expansion to some degree of what is currently in place, the details of which I don't have much on. It's a little, as far as my reaching out to find more out about it, it's not something that I've spent a lot of time on, in large part for the reasons that you mentioned. It is pay to play really at this point, and I've had comments about this with others. I'm kind of starting to adjust to the fact that this is becoming more like a professional football league, and kind of what that means for how we view things going forward. I'm not fully come to terms with exactly how I feel about that and what I think about it, other than I'm excited for the players. I do get a sense that NIL is going to expand at Duke, and it should be better for the players. I would also be remiss in my duties if I failed to mention that if you want to help out with that, check out the Durham Devils Club. They have several different giving levels. I think the intro is $5 a month, so definitely check that out. I think that would only be, of course, $60 a year. And that, I think, would be about the price of one of those very strangely expensive and odd milkshake slash coffee combos you can get at Starbucks. So for the price of that, you can help. For the price of just one of those a month, you can help keep good players playing for Duke on Saturdays. Now, in addition to that, we also have an email from former site contributor Michael Klein. Here's what he said about Manny Diaz and Manny Mania coming to Durham, and I agree with the caller that the Diaz hire was the right hire. Here's what Mike has to say. I have to say I was a bit surprised when Diaz's name popped out as the front runner, but looking at the upside, there are many. I'm pretty optimistic with the hire. I certainly trust Nina King. She knows what she is doing. Definite positives. He's young, but he's been a head coach at a Power 5 program, ties to the ACC, and big recruiting hubs in Florida, Georgia, and now some connections to the Penn State recruiting pipeline. He has ties to, and hopefully the ability to keep Feely on staff, which he did, for all the reasons you've mentioned previously. This was sent well before the Feely announcement was made, just so everybody understands. I feel like he, meaning Diaz, may have a similar mindset, appreciation for the opportunity at a second shot as a head coach that Cutcliffe had when he took the job, though the job is a way more appealing destination than it was when Cutcliffe took over. Both got raw deals at previous head coaching jobs, and hopefully Diaz has learned a lot from that Miami experience that will help in Durham. I hope fans will be patient because next year could be rough with the depleted roster, but fortunately, a less challenging schedule. I would think his priorities include getting the best possible staff in place and simultaneously hitting the recruiting trail. Maybe he can convince some of the portal guys to stay, but more than likely, it is going to be a focus on keeping the recruiting class on board with signing day, since signing day is nearly here, and hitting the portal hard and getting some guys to help for next year. It's been interesting seeing the reaction from Penn State fans. Some of them have been salty, and I watched one show, and the guys took a couple subtle shots at Duke's program. Overall, they seemed pretty bummed about him leaving, considering the success he has had. Not bad for just a D coordinator. I have seen some Miami fans laughing a bit, but the man had an overall winning record when he was there and went to 3 bowl games in 3 seasons. Miami has been a 500 team since he was fired, so I consider that background noise. I don't remember Ole Miss fans reacting similarly to Cutcliffe, but I'm sure it was there. Overall, I think this is a solid hire and ready for the next chapter. Mike, I agree with you 100%. I think this was a solid hire. I think it will work out well for the Blue Devils. I am all on board the Manny Mania train, and I hope we get a lot of good seasons in Durham with him as the head coach. I will say, though, next year, looking at who's decommitted, looking at what we have to do in the portal, and looking at what may happen with the recruiting staff, although we won't know till signing day or maybe a couple of days before, it could just be a down year. And that's just a reflection of what the prior coach did when he left the program, when he did, and the way that he did. So all that being said, I'm still optimistic about the hire. I would just tell everybody, be patient, give Diaz a couple of years. And with that, thanks again for the call, for the email. Reach out to us, and let's get right into the episode as we preview Duke versus Troy in the Birmingham Bowl. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Bull City Coordinators Duke Football Coverage Podcast. You can find us at our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Check us out on Twitter and most all the social medias at Duke FB Coverage. Our DMs are open. And send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. Give us a call to get on the podcast. You know the number. You just listened to a voicemail before we hopped on about the Diaz hire, which I'm excited about. And as you know, we have an interim coach, Trooper Taylor, for the bowl game. Our opponent also has an interim head coach for the bowl game, and that is what we are here to learn about. We did it during the regular season. We gave you a chance to get to know the opponent, so we're keeping that going for the bowl game. Our next guest is the sports editor of the Troy Messenger in Troy, Alabama. He is also the beat writer responsible for covering Troy University athletics, which obviously includes the football team. He is going to tell us all that we need to know about the Trojans and what to expect in the Birmingham Bowl. Josh Boutwell, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. And I look forward to learning about Troy. It's been a while since these teams have played. Tell us a little bit about where Troy is right now and what we know. We know that there's been a coaching change and we know someone else is coming in. So tell us what you know about the interim head coach and what you know about the new head coach.
Yeah, so Troy is coming off probably two of the best seasons, 2 year span in possibly school history, honestly. It really has been kind of an unprecedented 2 years here with Coach Summerall at the helm. They were coming off of 3 losing seasons, 3 really, really bad, really tough to watch seasons, honestly. And he just completely turned it around. Probably these last 2 years, the most dominating defense that we've seen at Troy ever. Just guys all over the field stacked. This year, the offense has been extremely explosive, extremely balanced. Kamani Vidal, the running back, he's had easily the greatest single season of any running back in Troy's history. And then you got playmakers all over the field with Chris Lewis being one of the main guys, as well as Jabri Barber from right up the road in Dothan. Greg Gasparotto is the defensive coordinator and now the interim head coach. He's a guy that he served at Army and just a bunch of different places. He's really young. He's really energetic, kind of like Summerall in that sense. Very passionate. And he has led, really took over a defense that last year, which of course lost several big time players like Carlton Marshall, who's probably the greatest linebacker that's ever been at Troy. And there was just no drop off whatsoever. And even possibly you could say even better, especially in terms of the pass rush. It's just been unreal with the pass rush this year.
Well, you mentioned, I'm going to get sidetracked here for a second, but I am going to come back to Troy. You mentioned Dothan, Alabama. That popped in my mind. Before I went to law school, I worked at this sign company out of Charleston, South Carolina. So I remember a lot of locations. The name of the store is Anchor Sign that most people don't remember. And I said, I swear, when you said that city's name, I said, I swear there's an Advance America store there. Sure enough, there is. That was that was one of Anchor's clients when I was there, and I looked it up. Sure enough, it's right there. It got a 5-star rating. Wow, that's all right. That's surprising, but good for them. I used to have this game that I would play where people would say, "I'm going wherever," and I'd say, "Oh, there's a Quiznos there, or there's a an old Blockbuster store getting torn down," or I'd name some sign company or electrical company there. So thank you for bringing that memory
But
into my
you,
mind.
you knew it was Dothan and not Dothan, so you're already ahead of the curve.
Well, so Virginia has some interesting pronunciation. Stanton, even though it's not spelled Stanton, it's spelled Staunton. Botetourt, which I think is a French derivative name, which, whatever. I mean, that's what we've got, right? Buchanan, obviously, that's how you're going to pronounce it. So, and growing up in the upstate of South Carolina, pronunciation, you just kind of learn to get by. So, you talked about the last 2 years being really good. Tell us about Summerall. He went to Tulane, is that correct? And tell us a little bit about him and what he brought to Troy and what we can expect as far as the team's mentality coming into the Birmingham Bowl.
Their mentality kind of matches him. Just unbelievably energetic, just passionate. He's one of the most passionate coaches I've ever been around. He's also one of the most personable, and I consider him a friend. Which so I'm personally hated to see him go, but like I said, they kind of match his personality, and you're going to see that a very physical team, a very fired up team. Like when you talk to these guys, they're really fired up about this. This is the biggest bowl game Troy's ever been in. Then no Sun Belt team has ever had a chance to play a Power Five school at a bowl game, so they really do kind of match his energy. And just the way he goes about things, the players would really literally like run through walls for him.
Well, one of the things we talked about before we got started is, it was kind of a joke, but is Duke going to be able to field a team? Guys have gone in the portal, a lot of guys, and again, I'm excited for Riley Leonard and RJ Oben and their next step in their career. As an ACC guy, I think you can understand why I don't like seeing them go to Notre Dame, given that abusive relationship that we have with the Irish, be that as it may. Has the portal hit Troy at all? Or have there been any people declaring that they're going to leave or sit out the bowl or anything like that?
Yeah, there's been a handful of guys. Most of them are more kind of depth guys. The biggest hit so far though was Jaden McDonald, leading tackler, a really good linebacker. He missed the majority of the last 2 years with injuries. Last year a knee injury, but came back this year, and he's been one of the better players on the defense. So I mean, I still don't know. Does that necessarily mean he won't play? I don't know. I haven't confirmed that yet, but I mean, we can kind of guess that more than likely not. But he's really the only starter so far that's hit the portal.
Well, that's a good position for Troy to be in. The Blue Devils have had a lot of guys, although we're hearing that they may be able to play.
Yeah.
But I doubt. I mean, I can't imagine. Obviously, Riley Leonard won't. I can't imagine RJ Oben will. I think it could be difficult. And I've watched part of the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. Those guys are fast at Troy. They're good. It's going to be a tough one. I kind of want to get your thought on this because we've heard about this kind of massive conference restructuring coming out of the NCAA where schools will be able to basically pay the NIL dollars directly to the players. Uh, how do you think that could impact teams that are in, I went to college Charleston, so we were in the SoCon at that time, but now they're in the Cougars are in the CAA. What kind of effect would that have on football programs like Troy and teams in the Sun Belt Conference?
Yeah, it would be honestly, in my opinion, devastating. It's already, in my opinion, it's already the kind of the haves and the have-nots. And I think it'll be just more of that. There's already this push for some group of schools that want to kind of form their own almost division, which to me seems like kind of defeats the purpose. You're just making another FCS. So I don't really understand the purpose of that. But I mean, it kind of feels like that would be kind of pushing things more towards that. It's obviously going to make things difficult for the smaller schools that don't have huge NIL collectives and things of that nature.
But tell us a little bit about the football culture at Troy. I mean, obviously it's big because it's the Southeast and it's in Alabama, but tell us a little bit about the football culture there at Troy.
Oh man, they're passionate about football here, man. You like you mentioned, it's Alabama, so football is a football is a way of life down here. And Troy has a deep history of tradition and success in football. Obviously, national championship in Division II and NAIA, and then they were a power in the FCS before they jumped to FBS. So it's they kind of that those 3 years I mentioned that were really rough. That was a rough time for Troy fans just because how passionate they are. And passionate is the word that I keep going back to. And that kind of sums it up pretty well.
Now, do you think that there's going to be a pretty good turnout there for the Birmingham Bowl as far as people showing up, getting there for Troy fans?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they've actually allotted maybe twice now, allotted more tickets to Troy to sell because they sold all of them. So, yeah, I think there'll be a pretty good turnout.
Ooh, okay. Well, let's see. Looks like the programs have met twice in
Yeah.
the history of both schools.
Yeah.
Uh, Duke has won both games. That was 2013 to 2014, and they have not played since.
Yeah.
Yeah, are the players for Troy kind of looking at this as a chance to make a statement, a chance to say something about what Troy is and what their conference is and what it's capable of?
Absolutely, yeah. Greg Gasparotto, like I talked about, the interim coach, he talked about earlier this week. They're going down there to do something that no other team in Sun Belt history, not just Troy history, has done, which is to beat a Power Five school in a bowl game. Obviously, Troy's been known in the last few years for beating teams like Oklahoma State, Mississippi State, LSU. So it's not like they're not a giant killer in the past, but I mean they're definitely fired up to kind of have this type of a stage to be able to show what Troy football is about.
Now, is Gasparotto going to be the head coach, or have they named the head coach? I can't remember right off the top of my head.
No, they haven't named one yet. Obviously, I would say he's probably a candidate for it. He was selected to be the interim coach for a reason. But we still don't know anybody yet. They've been very tight-lipped. I've been trying to get as much information as I can, but yeah, I don't expect we'll go past Monday not knowing though.
I want to ask you one thing about your thoughts as you're covering the Sun Belt, because Summerall's name came up when Duke was looking for a head coach to replace Mike Elko and ultimately hired Manny Diaz.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, and Summerall goes to Tulane. And I was just curious, kind of in the past, before NIL took its current shape, before the portal took its current shape, and I'm not criticizing any of those two things. I'm just curious your thoughts on this. Do you think it's going to be harder for guys to jump up from schools in the G5 level or below that to get up to higher schools because it's going to become so critical to bring in a guy who's got some name recognition and can generate NIL donorship?
I think that could be an issue, but at the same time, I think probably those bigger schools are going to look at someone who maybe doesn't have those type of resources, still being able to win as a big plus to sell to the collectives and things of that nature. I think that may have as much of an impact as anything. but mentioning that Tulane is one of those kind of smaller schools that does have a pretty sizable collective.
Well, talk about that. I mean, you kind of you're close to the program. You've been watching it evolve, and I've heard some stuff with Elko's departure about the future of NIL, what it's going to take. I'm just kind of curious, what is the NIL collective or culture or whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to phrase it? What is it like there at Troy, and maybe what are they thinking about for the future to stay competitive?
So they do have a collective. It's called Trojans Together Collective. You're not going to hear me say anything bad about them. They actually use that, or one of the players actually used that to raise funds for me with to help with my cancer treatment. So, um, things like that. When you hear bad things about NIL all the time, it's pretty. That's one of those things that are really cool. But they're using it mainly for primarily local businesses to be able to obviously use players to advertise things of that nature. It's been growing. It's less than a year old, but there's been a lot of support from the community with it. They obviously know that this is something that you have to have in modern football to try to compete, even at the Group of Five level.
Well, and I like the way that you described it, because I think that's what a lot of us hope NIL would be, where it's more of a community.
Yeah.
And maybe, it's obviously some of the bigger schools you're going to have, the shoe companies and Gatorade and all that and get involved. But the kind of donors or whatever coming in and sort of buying and paying the players, it creates some unfairness. And it's great to see, like you mentioned, that they're using that to help you go through what you're going through, because people who listen to this know my dad has gone through that. And so I think that's a fantastic use of NIL, and it would be a much better thing if we could see more of that. And obviously, we're all hoping that your treatment goes well, and we know that that takes a lot out of you, and we're hoping for the best. I've been kind of toying this around in my head, because growing up right outside of Clemson, seeing big football there, and growing up in the ACC country, then going to school in Charleston and watching kind of smaller, you could say smaller, but very intense and passionate college sports fans. I'm trying to think about what may happen to schools like Duke, where football's not as important or as big. And, you know, I've been teasing this in my head. Let's say there's like a second tier or a third tier. I don't think any of the schools want to end up like Maryland, where they're not really competing for anything, but they're part of the Big Ten money. I mean, the people who root for Troy is the mindset, hey, we want to be somewhere we can win. We want to win championships and be something we can be proud of. I mean, if they end up in a permanent kind of G5 status, which I'm not saying necessarily would happen to Duke, but it wouldn't stun me the way football is. Uh, you know, would it be kind of like what we've seen with the North Dakota States and of the world, where hey, no, we're not moving up. We like what we've got.
And no, as far as like moving to different conferences and things of that nature, I don't think anyone really sees that as any type of possibility. But no, the people around here, they want to be in the playoff. I mean, that's just absolutely point blank. Like if you ask anybody, I'm not just talking about fans, I'm talking about administrators, players, coaches, know that they want to be a playoff team. And yeah, I think obviously, like you're talking about with the NIL, who knows what the future holds in terms of maybe attitudes change with that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the landscape is so uncertain, and it's just so hard. It reminds me of that line from The Man in the High Castle about fate being fluid, which of course isn't fate, but be that as it may,
I think
it's
one thing that people kind of hang on to in terms of like the group of five schools is that there is that one guaranteed spot in the playoff. I think a lot of people kind of are still hanging on to that, as at least there is that reward there, if you're able to have the type of season where you get maybe an upset over a big school, or you're like Liberty this year where you go undefeated.
or you're like SMU and beat a really good Tulane team and get hosed by Boo Corrigan, who's got no current or future conference pride. Anyway, I'm turning into salty Dave Doran right now. It's crazy. You know, The future landscape of college football is interesting to me because I'm sort of coming around to this. I don't know what you think about this, but I almost think that the college football playoff and the BCS is sort of ruined, and TV is a part of it, has sort of ruined college football, where you could used to have an 8, 9, 10 win season and you won a bowl game or you went to a bowl game and that was a great season. People would be happy. But now it seems like there's too much. Look, you go to the playoff or it's nothing. And it seems to cheapen a lot of otherwise great accomplishments. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's something I've been toying around in my head for a while.
I think it's definitely hurt bowl games for sure. Just the thought of a player saying that, nah, I'm going to sit out. I'm not going to play this bowl game. Just to me, 10 years ago, that would be unfathomable to think about. Like it's just unreal. I understand where guys are coming from. We've seen guys get hurt in a bowl game and tear the ACL and just never get to go to the NFL. We have seen that, but it's just like, I don't know, a competitor, an athlete of that caliber saying that I'm just, no, I don't feel like playing. It kind of blows my mind. And obviously the playoffs have hurt those bowl games where used to, if you went to something like the Outback Bowl or just the Music City Bowl, whatever, it was a big deal. And there's just a lot of teams, a lot of kids who see it that way. If you're, for example, Alabama, if Alabama doesn't make it in the playoffs, they look at the Sugar Bowl as a negative, and it's just like you would never ever have thought that even 10 years ago.
And as a Duke fan, I've had those conversations with people where, and obviously the expectations in Durham have been different for a long time, but I mean, this season was 7-5 with all these injuries and this brutal schedule. I mean, this just brutal schedule. I think it's a really good season, and I don't think that you should look down on that. And I mean, gosh, if we get into the Sugar Bowl and have a down year, I mean, Lord, I'll take that in a minute. But I do think that there's something to be said for having a long view. I mean, I've had this conversation with people about basketball right now, where it's year 2 of Shire. This team may not gel. It's okay. Same kind of conversation was being had with Hubert Davis in Chapel Hill last year, but now it seems like he's fine this year. So just kind of be patient. But I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. Tell us, a long one. Well, tell us a little bit about how far away are you guys from Birmingham? And two, what do you know about that stadium? And for those of us who are going, what we should expect?
Uh, Birmingham is about a 2-hour drive from Troy, so it's not too bad. And with it being an early kickoff, I'm going to be able to go up to Birmingham and come home the same day, which is it's beautiful. Last year in the Cure Bowl, that was about a 6-hour drive, so it was a little bit different. If you've never been to Protective Stadium, man, that's a beautiful stadium. I don't know if you've heard much about Legion Field, the legendary Legion Field in Birmingham, which is where everything got held before Protective got built. There's a big difference, not just where the neighborhood is in, just that the old gray lady was falling apart. Protective Stadium is a beautiful stadium. It's honestly, God, I'm going to get shot for this. It's nicer than Bryant Denny and far nicer than Jordan Hare, in my opinion, especially when it comes to the press box. It's a beautiful stadium for sure.
Now, I know UAB plays there. Is that what? That's where the USFL played, right?
Yes, that's where the Stallions play, and
Gotcha.
the professional soccer team they have there plays there.
Gotcha. So we coming on behalf of the Blue Devils should be excited about the location and looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun place.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's downtown Birmingham. Now, don't get too excited about the parking because the parking downtown sucks. But just pay for the parking. Just bite the bullet. It's not where you have to worry about the neighborhood it's in or anything like that. It's downtown. It's fun things to do downtown in Birmingham. Birmingham's a great place to be.
We're actually going to try to start our drive back after the game. So I'll probably end up staying the night in South Carolina and then drive back on Christmas Eve that morning. But it'll be good. I might be able to stop by see my grandfather in Greensboro, which will be good. Well, you've taught us a lot about the team. Some people have called this the interim head coach bowl. Uh, there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
but I think it should still be an exciting game. Tell us what you expect in the game, and then roll that into your prediction for who's going to win.
Ooh, this is going to be hard for me because I've only seen one Duke game so far, and I'm planning on watching a couple of games this weekend just to see what to expect. But then, like you mentioned,
Not to be, yeah, I know. That's why I'm making you predict first. I don't think I'm going to have one, but not to be rude and interrupt, but which game did you watch?
I believe it was Clemson.
That was a great game.
Yeah.
That was great.
Um, but I think Troy's just going to be fired up for this game. I think just there's probably going to be a few guys playing with a chip on their shoulder, and I feel like Troy can pull this one out.
Yeah, I'm going to hold off on my prediction, and I might come back and edit this later just because I don't know what the roster is going to
Yeah.
be. And I was listening to the Best of the Adam Gold podcast before this got started, and I can't remember who he was talking to, and he said, "Look, I've got to do predictions starting tomorrow, and I don't know what the rosters are going to be for teams."
Yeah.
So, I mean, part of me I'll put it this way: I want Duke to win, but I would not be surprised if Troy wins. I'm assuming Loftus is going to play quarterback, and that means it's going to be a close and an exciting game. And I'll say that. But, with a lot of these guys who aren't going to be there, who've been such key cogs in the team, I just don't know. But I know that Duke will be fired up. I know that Duke will want to win. I know that the Blue Devils will want to finish this season strong. I'm going to drop in a voicemail. We're going to check in. I'm sure you have not listened to this podcast to get up to speed on the Blue Devils. We have a game. Listen to the Mac Brown interview. That'll get you ready for everything you need to know. Mac Brown. But we have a recurring segment where we check in with my dad. We're going to touch base with Rich. We're going to do a check-in with Richlandia and hear his prediction for the game. We're going to do that now.
Well, hello again, everyone, and happy holidays from Richlandia. I've got to start out by saying right off the bat, sorry to disappoint you. I know you were all looking forward to a complete bowl game appearance here, but it looks like I've been relegated to just the usual check-in and preview of the opponent. So sorry about that. Hopefully you'll get everything else you want for Christmas this year, folks. Look at the Trojans. On the ground, they're rushing for just over 158 yards a game, 4.5 yards a carry. They've scored 18 times on the ground, and they hold opponents to 103.7 a game, 3.1 per carry, and 12 rushing TDs. Through the air, they've averaged just under 268 yards a game, completing at a rate of 61.3%, 29 touchdowns, and only 5 picks. They're allowing almost 203 yards a game through the air and 62% completion rate, 13 touchdowns through the air, but 13 interceptions. They punt for a net average of 38.2. Their field goal kicker, very efficient, 18 out of 22. They're averaging about 46 yards a game in penalties. And time of possession, they've had a slight edge there over the course of the season at 31-14. 31 minutes and 14 seconds. Their third down conversion rate is 41.57% versus 31.84 for the opposition. Fourth down conversion rate, 51.85%, and they've gone for it 27 times. They've held their opponents to a conversion rate on fourth down at just under 34.5%. They've fumbled the ball 21 times, losing 12. The opponents have also fumbled 22 times, losing 12. And they've got 45 sacks for a total for 325 total yards lost versus 24 sacks and 182 yards lost for the opposition this year. In the red zone, they've been 47 out of 50 with 32 touchdowns, and they've allowed 30 out of 38 trips in the red zone for scores from their opponents, but only 19 touchdowns. Vidal is the primary running back, 1,682 yards, 14 touchdowns, averaging 121.69 a game on 280 carries for the season. Taylor, second best ball carrier, but only 66 carries for 343 yards and 1 touchdown. Their quarterback has thrown for over 3,000 yards and 27 touchdowns versus 5 picks. And they really spread the ball around. Barker with 65 catches, the leading receiver, 5 touchdowns, gets almost 69 yards a game and receptions. Lewis, 32 catches, but 10 TDs. Stoudemire, 43 catches, Ross, 38, Vidal, 17, and Connor, 13, with 4 touchdowns. Well, I think my event is going to be the interruption from none other than the podcast host himself. But hey, I got to speak to my granddaughter, so it was worthwhile. So let me try to finish this up for you now. Defensively for the Trojans, they have 6 players with over 50 total tackles. McDonald leading the way with 75 of those and 9.5 tackles for loss. Pettis with 73 total tackles and 4 tackles for loss. Davis with 63. Stringer with 60 and 4.5 TFLs. Jabuner with 53 and 16 tackles for loss, totaling 81 yards. Solomon with 52 total tackles. Stewart has 4 interceptions for the Trojans, and Davis has 2. Schedule-wise, Kansas State blew them out early, and they lost a close one to James Madison. They did beat App State for their conference championship with that running back, Vidal, scoring 5 times, which earned him a helmet sticker from the college football final crew. Of course, like us, their head coach has left and gone to other pastures. He's headed to Tulane. And, of course, Elku has been replaced by Manny Diaz, but Trooper, I think, still in charge for the bowl game. And the Bull City coordinator crew's headed down there with brother Will as well. And the big questions, of course, are who's going to play or sit out for both teams and how much of a home field advantage will Troy have being from Alabama. And for the players staying, though, it's a great chance to show the new staff something headed into the off season. And, again, just want to remind people how close we were to getting to my prediction of 10-2 in spite of all those injuries. Let's see, 8-3, I believe 15 points, and we could have still made 10-2. 5 points, we'd have been 9-3 possibly. So I'd really like to see us get win number 8 here for this group. Hope everyone there has out there and Richlandia and elsewhere has a happy holiday. And as always, love my grandchildren, and let's go Duke.
All right. Thank you, Dad. I look forward to a long car ride with you and Will. He's my brother. And hopefully we'll have a lot of fun and not end up like in the Simpsons, itchy and scratchy land and parking in the itchy lot. So I'm looking forward to this game. It'll be a lot of fun. We've been talking for a little bit here. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on. Is there anything else that you think we should know as Blue Devils fans about either Birmingham or about Troy to get us ready for what hopefully will be an exciting Birmingham bowl game?
The biggest thing about Birmingham is, like I mentioned, the parking. I'm probably one of the people that are so negative about that because I hate it. Hopefully you got your media parking.
No, I don't. We're staying at a hotel downtown, so I think we're sort of within walking distance.
Okay,
but
you'll be good then.
But no, I'm this. I do this for fun, man. I do this for fun and probably self-torture. I guess I must be a Catholic at heart. I don't know. But what other than parking, there's got to be some good places to eat down there.
Oh, come on, man! This is Alabama. Come on. Just point at a barbecue place, and you're headed the right way. I believe there is a Dreamland in Birmingham, and so that would be a strong a strong one right there.
All right, we can balance it against the North Carolina barbecue, which is actually my favorite. I like South Carolina barbecue too, but had a buddy of mine at the sign company at Anchor from Gastonia who made some very, very good barbecue. Virginia, we ain't got it. It ain't. If you're coming to Virginia for barbecue, you've made some bad life choices. Let me put it that way. Okay. We got good deer, really good venison, not great barbecue. Okay. Well, Josh, you've been kind enough to take some time out of your schedule, and I really do appreciate it because you obviously don't have to do this. But one thing that I do for everybody who takes some time to come on here is I give them an open mic and give them a chance to talk about anything that they want to talk about. So I'm going to give you the floor. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to talk about politics right now.
All right.
I'm just playing. I don't really have anything to say. Just I appreciate you having me on. Follow us at troymessenger.com. Check us out. I'm on Twitter at Josh B. Messenger. Just hope everybody has a safe trip that's coming from Duke, and hopefully we have a great game to watch.
When you said you were going to talk about politics, I thought it was going to be a comment on the Florida investigation or
Oh,
legislation about the
God.
playoff. I don't know what's going on there,
Yeah,
but
don't get me started on that. I ran it on that on Twitter about that one.
I deliberately have not looked at it because it's performative,
Of
right?
course it is. Yeah.
Right. It's performative and it's a waste of time and resources.
Yep.
Uh, but here's the thing. The D I call it D2 because that's what I'm used to. That's what I grew up with, and I'm not going to change because to quote "It's Always Sunny," I'm an American and I don't have to. Um, so it they have a playoff that everybody can participate in, and I know we have bowl games, and I know it makes a lot of money, but it seems like you should do bowl games at week 0 kickoffs, right? So that people will play in them and then you can gear them sort of summer vacations and you can still get money for the communities, right?
Yeah.
And then you can have an actual playoff that is fully not a subsidiary of ESPN's love affair with the SEC.
I stopped trying to figure out the NCAA and anything they do a long time ago.
Well, that's good advice because one thing though I will tell you because I started reading an article about and I call it the super conference that they want to create, right?
Yeah.
that that is all geared to avoid employing the students and getting on the hook for their workers' compensation claims. And that's part of it. There's obviously other things there, but that's where this part of where this term student athlete derives from. As I was thinking about this in my head, because apparently I have nothing better to do, but you think about how many players get injured, even
Mm.
small injuries, and you have them on NIL money and employee wages, and you got to start paying 2/3 or whatever their average weekly wage while they're hurt. And if you're doing that, what is going to happen to? We talked about who's going to play, but one thing we've seen, most schools don't have actual injury reports. That's going to have to change soon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You-
The interesting thing, going back into politics a little bit, they actually the NIL bill that one of our genius people from Alabama put together, which I don't have a lot of kind of things to say about him, but one of the interesting things in that proposed bill was the healthcare that there has to be healthcare in place for a certain number of years, even after they've graduated or left, and that's a plus, and that's something that I really hope in some capacity gets passed where they don't really have a choice in that matter.
Well, I think that would be great
Yeah.
because that's more important to the sport than is the problems with the portal, and I'm putting problems in air quotes, and
Yeah.
the problems with NIL money. Meanwhile, Charlie Baker's not saying squat really about the problems created by the Pac-12 falling apart, or by the fact that coaches just up and leave all the time, and I don't need to get
Yeah,
into all
well,
that.
that stuff about the coaches and stuff like that is why I haven't ever been able to kind of get outraged over the transfer portal because I mean, if your coach is able to leave whenever he feels like it, I don't understand why your player couldn't. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, and Charlie Baker though apparently doesn't get it. And like I said today, when I saw that case, and here's the problem: is the NCAA is going to turn over its rulemaking authority to federal courts, which is an attorney. Courts are good at solving the specific problems that are before it, not necessarily as great at dealing with other issues down the road to foresee things, which is what you have legislative and rulemaking bodies for. I called it a Blutarski rule to go back to Animal House, where if they transfer during this 14-day window and they play, and then later that's kind of voided out and that rule's no longer in existence, that those games won't count towards eligibility. I mean, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
nonsense. But anyway, we go on for a long time about that. But Josh, thank you so much for coming on. You're going through a lot, I know, personally right now, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you making the time for this. And everybody who's listening is wishing you the absolute best, and we hope everything goes well for you.
I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure. It's been a fun talk.
Well, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to some barbecue down in Alabama when we're down there. And guys, hey, let's go see these seniors. Let's close this season out strong for the Blue Devils. Follow us on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Give us a call. You'll get on the podcast. You know the telephone number to call in. Follow us on all the social medias. And as always, go Duke.